What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast. My name is Sam Thrash. I'm your host over here. Thanks for pressing play on another one of our podcasts. I always appreciate that. This week, I have a very special guest joining me. His name's Zack Butterfield. He's actually a therapist and has a very unique niche in that world, bridging the gap between mental health needs in communities, oftentimes rural communities, and hunting in the outdoors and using hunting in the outdoors for those therapeutic purposes and those, mental health reasons and everything that a lot of us find value in everything. But he is bringing it to a stage and a platform that not a lot of other folks are using it for, and it's very unique what he is doing. He is the author of a book on that very subject titled Hunting for Happiness. You guys can find that on Amazon and really enjoy this conversation with him, kind of breaking down some details on exactly how he reaches clientele that a lot of other therapists might not be able to reach or relate to, and what he's doing to bridge this gap between different worlds and everything and kind of tie it all together. So it's a very interesting conversation. It's not all business. It's not all mental health and therapy talk and everything like that. Zach is a hunter. We do talk about some hunting stuff, including a black bear hunt that he just got back from this year. That was pretty exciting and an awesome story. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. It's unique, it's special, and yeah, I'm really excited to share it with you guys. Before we turn it over to our conversation with Zach, got a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way first. First thing is, I want to point you guys in the direction of fallobsession.com specifically for our 2025 turkey hunt contest. If you hunt turkeys, you need to get in on this, and there's not a lot of time left to get in on it at the time that this episode's coming out in the spring of 2025. You have until June 8th to enter the contest and enter your turkey that you killed this year. We have had some awesome birds hit the ground. We've actually had the high score, all-time high score, I should say, for this contest broken not once but twice just this year in the contest. Just some absolute stud birds hitting the ground. And if you guys are hearing that and thinking, man, my bird's not big enough, you might think again. Go to the website, at least check it out, see how the scoring works and everything like that, so you can get an idea if you're questioning that, and enter your turkey in the contest. We have cash prizes for first, second, and third place, as well as some gear sweepstakes, a hunt giveaway, all sorts of crazy stuff going on with gear from Hoot Camo, Wiley X, VP Archery, a $9,000 safari package from News on Safaris, all sorts of awesome stuff happening in our 2025 turkey hunt contest. Again, go to fallobsession.com/hunt-competition to learn more, to sign up, and you have until June 8th to get your bird entered. Be sure you are following Fall Obsession on all the major social platforms. We post daily with frequent updates from not just our brand, but also our team in the field throughout the country. They got a lot of awesome stuff going on, especially right now during spring turkey hunting. Go to fallobsession.com and check out everything that's on there, including our educational articles, our shows, our films, all the stuff filters through that website. YouTube channel, if you're not subscribed, you need to be. The podcast video versions hit the YouTube on Thursdays, as well as our different hunting shows and films, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And guys, make sure that you go check out Carbon TV if you haven't already. Carbon TV is like Netflix for hunting, except it's free for you guys, so it's even better. And you guys can stream hundreds of different hunting and outdoor shows, podcasts, films, all that kind of stuff. And you will find four different hunting shows that Fall Obsession produces on the Carbon TV platform. This podcast is on there, as well as our staff inspired video podcast series called Couch Chats. That's on Carbon TV. And we also have two different hunting shows on there titled Texas Dirt and Midwest Mindset. Guys, go check out Carbon TV and start streaming today. Don't miss out on some discount codes from our sponsors and our partners of the show that are spread out throughout this episode. Don't skip through the ads, guys. Listen, because they can save you some money. And with that, I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to get over to our conversation with Zach. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
one with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast. I'm Sam, hosting you guys as always, and this week I'm joined by Zack Butterfield. Welcome to our show, man.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm super stoked. We kind of connected a little bit before this podcast to chat about it, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. For our listeners that don't know who you are, though, I want to give you the chance kicking it off just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm in Utah. I'm from Utah. Grew up an avid outdoorsman and hunter, and professionally kind of found myself drawn towards like the medical field, and then eventually doing mental health therapy as a counselor. And I found that because of my background and like my love for hunting, there's not a whole ton of therapists in my category. I've probably only met one in my whole career up to this point. Um, but I found that like my clients really resonated with me, especially if they're from like rural communities, like using hunting examples, fishing examples, farming examples. So I've kind of been, really like been concerned about the research that shows that there's higher levels of suicide in rural communities, higher levels of domestic violence, higher levels of substance abuse, and then like no help or no help that's good help or that's like specific, like speaking in our language or to us. So that kind of led to me writing and publishing a book last year called Hunting for Happiness, where using like hunting and fishing stories, I talk about uh like mental illness in our language, and then like coping skills or ways to like heal and become a better person. So it's not just completely focused on like the problems, it's also focused on self growth and improving your relationships, improving yourself. um and really just trying to make it very simple, very fun, very easy to access. But that's kind of my background. That's where I'm at. And yeah, have had a lot of fun with it, fun connecting with people, some really cool meaningful conversations with vets, first responders, people in rural communities, ranchers, farmers, um, stuff like that. It's led to some cool conversations that I'm surprised when they happen sometimes, with like these tough guys on the outside. But like, we need friends too, like hard things happen for us too. So
Yeah.
it's been really cool.
That's awesome, man. And I kind of wanted to dive into that just in a little bit more detail too, because I mean, you talked about it being not many people doing what you're doing in your category, I think is kind of how you put it.
Yeah.
And, just from the standpoint of that more rural area, those rural areas, that way of life and everything like that. Why is that? Why do you think there aren't a lot of people that are doing that in that genre, if you will?
Yeah, I think that probably like the beginning foundings of psychology maybe were from people who were atheists and more liberal in views. And so it seemed like therapy and psychology was like an anti-religious belief or an anti conservative values and lifestyles kind of beliefs. And so I think that perception has maybe continued, even though it really has evolved and morphed since like the origins of it.
Mhm.
Um, and then, like the benefits of being in a city is like if you don't like your therapist, you can find another therapist pretty quickly,
Right.
like if you don't vibe personality wise, if you don't vibe with their style, you can find another one easy. In a lot of rural communities, there's maybe one or two, and if you don't connect with either of them, or you're worried that, people are going to see your car driving to their office or whatever,
Hmm.
like that causes like shame and, worries about like, what would people think about you? How do people perceive you? And I think that just happens less in cities. I do think that that's kind of changing with online therapy. I think the challenge is, and this kind of goes into some concepts in my book, is if you have a screen between you and somebody else, you can't pick up on their like neurological signals very well. And that is immediately going to be a barrier to feeling connected to somebody
Hmm.
because on a very basic neurological level, to some extent we're not much different from deer or some of these herd animals, you know? And like we need to have that contact with them to understand like what's safe, what's dangerous, you know, like and you can't quite have that through a computer screen. So I've done lots of online therapy. I do feel like it's helpful, but it's most helpful if I've already had a relationship with that person face to face. And then for whatever reason, because of life circumstances, we have to move it to online,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So those are kind of my thoughts. I
Yeah.
don't know from your perspective if you feel like from what you see, like to like, you know, like because I'm in this world, you know, I know who comes and sees me, but as someone on the outside looking in, like what do you feel like are the what do you feel like are like the conversations about that?
Well, so I mean, starting off kind of where you start off with this, just talking about how, um, there's kind of been there's I think that there's been a shift, right, in
Yeah.
the focus on a lot of stuff like this. I think that in my world, and if I hadn't said it yet on the show or on this episode, at least like full time, I'm a firefighter outside the hunting industry, right? So in my world, I feel like there is a lot of um, there's like a generational shift almost because you have a lot of the old heads that are still on the department and everything, or saying department just in general, not necessarily talking about mine specifically, but just in general terms in the fire service, kind of they grew up in the whole world of you bottle it up, you deal with it, it is what it is type deal, and that was it. And you have all of these guys who are toward the end of their career, and they're crusty, they're grumpy, they're not the most pleasant person to be around. They're divorced, they have had a rough go of it and everything. And I think that part of that contributes, and there's definitely been a heavy focus, I think, in the last 10 years in the fire department world, at least first responders in general, on the mental health side of everything. And there's been a lot of organizations, even some down here local to me, that are popping up that are specifically focused on like fire and police and the mental helping them with mental health stuff. So I know I'm one of the instructors for our new hire process. Whenever we hire a new group of people, I'm one of the guys that teach them and try to get them acclimated to our department and how we do stuff. And that's a part of that curriculum now, is like, hey, this is how the mental health side of this whole thing works. This is what you can expect over the course of your career, and these are the tools that are out there to help you, because you're not supposed to bottle it up. You're not supposed to just work through it and deal with it. And I think just society in general, you kind of going back to the general world and some of what you're talking about, right? I think that has been a big shift. I do think you're correct in that it might have started or been pushed a lot by folks with a certain way of thinking or political beliefs, or just the fact that they're from the city, and
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
relate to outdoors or hunters or anything like that, right? And that could turn people off for sure. But
Yeah.
I do definitely see that shift, which is a good thing. I do think there is such a thing as going too far with it, and that might be a whole nother conversation, right? Like, um, my world, for example, there are things that you know certain people, like, it doesn't bother them, right?
Yeah.
Certain
Yeah.
things that you see or go through, or calls that you run, and it just straight up doesn't bother somebody. But you have all these other people that are all of a sudden rushing to aid, like, oh, are you okay? Do you need help? And it's like, no, I'm fine. At the same time, I signed up to do this job. I understand what's involved. If I need help, I'll ask. But that's the extreme on the other side. I think that it's all in good intentions and everything, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say that the point you bring up, I feel like is a very relevant point that comes up very often for me in terms of like like is therapy going to wussify me, or
Yeah.
like am I making a problem of something that's not a problem? And so I'll be a little bit vague here, but like there are certain cities here in Utah that have started to require their first responders to have checkups from a mental health professional like
Oh,
twice a
really?
year. And I've had some that have met with me once and continued. I have some that met with me once to check the box and completely move on. And there is that large age range that you're talking about, of like
Yep.
the crusty older ones. And one of them was like, it was like, dude, I have so much trauma. You don't even want to break down this wall. And I was
You
like,
don't want to open this
I was,
jar.
I was like, I believe you. I was like, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about hunting before I before and I think that caught him off guard a little bit. That I was like, you have walls for reasons. You have psychological defenses for reasons. Like
Mhm.
it's not bad to tear those down. Like anger, anxiety, stress, like all these things can be very useful. They can also be very destructive. And so to me, you know, there probably is a section of my profession that does coddle and does, like keep people stuck and does like enhance the problem. But in my mind, like that doesn't lead to success.
Right.
And so building more like mental fortitude um is just as important as dealing with things that like are actually bothering you. And I think that the perception of like talking about your emotions and dealing with your emotions makes you weaker. I don't see that as the case. I think that a lot of people actually are in fear of their emotions or in fear of not understanding themselves. And to me, fear is weakness, like or more like fear in that you don't deal with something, you avoid something, you ignore it, until it becomes like bigger and bigger and bigger instead of like understanding it, expressing it, communicating it. Like I feel like that takes a lot of work and not easy to do per se.
Hey guys, sorry to cut y'all off from the conversation. We'll get back to it in just a second. But first, I want to tell you guys about Hoot Camo. Hoot Camo is one of the best camouflage brands out there for the blue collar hunter. The prices, you can't beat them. The patterns are extremely versatile. They work in so many different environments. I have worn Hoot Camo hunting whitetails, hogs, and turkeys down here in the hardwoods, the mesquites, the scrub brush of Texas. I've worn it in the flatland plains of eastern Colorado hunting mule deer. I've even worn it in the mountains of central Idaho hunting elk. It works in so many different places. It is extremely high quality gear, extremely warm, holds up well against the elements. You cannot beat it. Go to hootcamo.com, use the code FallObsession15 on your next order, no matter how big or small it is, and check out everything that Hoot Camo has on there for you guys.
Yeah, no, I agree with that entirely. Yeah, it is you have to have you can't just be this, and I'm not great as good with words as you are, right? You
No, go
can't just
for it.
you can't just be this soft squishy thing that's, super sensitive and all that kind of stuff. Like people have to you have to be able to get through life at the same time, and life throws its challenges and everything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand that entirely.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, like, and I might be diving a little bit more than you want to get into how you
Wherever
do
you want.
business,
Yeah.
but I am curious. Like you talked earlier about how you have folks that in the smaller communities, right? You gave the example of, well, I don't want anybody to know I'm seeing a therapist. I don't want anybody to see my car driving to the office, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, a lot of those smaller communities or smaller places, they're more tight-knit in that aspect of everybody knows everybody type deal. How do you break that barrier into a group, a community, an area, a rural area, as you're talking about, to let those folks know that they have access to you?
Yeah, I would say that the benefit and the cost of what you're describing is that in small communities, word of mouth spreads quickly. And
Hmm.
so I've had to do extremely little marketing for myself. Um, because like, if someone has gotten help in a small community, their friend has trouble, their friend is like, "Hey, you should go see Zach." And when that's the case, I also think it's important for me to be upfront that like, if someone comes in and says like, "Hey, my friend sent me to you. I know they've been working with you." I said like, I appreciate all referrals, but this is going to be between me and you. I can't legally share whether I even know that person or not.
Right.
So that could be something in your mind, but uh if they are not sitting here in my office, I they are not in my mind and I do not know them,
Hmm.
is kind of how I approach it. And so I'm very, very clear on that that's the case. I've also had one situation where I had neighbors that did not know they were both seeing me, and uh, they did have conflicts with each other actually, and they did. I don't think either of them ever knew that like I actually knew both sides of the story, but
Right.
I just made sure that I wasn't scheduling them back to back. I made sure I was scheduling them on different days. And whoever's in front of me, like I am on their team, which doesn't mean that I coddle them or like, totally enable their point of view. In that case, I just had way more context of, what was going on and why these people were clashing so much.
Yeah. I can only imagine that's a challenging spot to be in. And not just for that situation, but just as a therapist in general. I've always I've always looked at that from the standpoint of, man, speaking about me personally, I would have
Yeah.
such a hard time keeping any bias out of it, man. Like
Yeah.
I guess I'm too judgmental of a person or something. I don't know, but I like every time I'm focused on that world or in that world, or even talking to mine, it's like, man, it is. Yeah, I would have such a hard time being in your shoes. So I got mad
Yeah.
respect for people who can have their own walls and barriers and everything from that side of the table, right? From that seat, and be able to be the person that your client, your patient needs
Yeah.
in that moment, right? Because
Yeah.
man, it would be hard for me to not have some some personal thoughts in there too.
Well, I think people bring that up to me often, and I think it's my style of therapy is so there's a lot of different beliefs of like what produces change, right? Because if you're going to therapy or seeking out help, your goal is you want something to change. You want something to be different.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of different theories and beliefs of what leads to change. And in my perspective, it's awareness leads to change. And so I kind of visualize it as like everyone maybe has like, their lives on the surface, but then they all have like, a cave. And I'd say more often than not, people are, terrified of going into their caves. And so I see it as like instead of like saying like, hey, you should build your house here, like you should farm this area. I see it more as like, hey, let's go in your cave and like I'll carry the flashlight. I'll help you understand yourself. I'll help you understand the whole world, the landscape, but you construct your life. And
Mhm.
in some of those ways, I don't have to be biased. I don't have to give my personal beliefs. Um, because like that's not going to help them understand them. uh the other part of that is like there's no way you can be unbiased. Like I will always be biased.
Right.
Like, and so I think that as long as I know what my bias is, and if it's a situation, like if like it often comes up where people are like, should I stay married, should I get divorced or whatever. That is never my decision.
Right.
Never my decision. My bias in some of these cases would always be to run and get out and get away. Like and get out fast, but like that's not their life, and so it does no good for me to offer my bias from my life, but
Right.
help them understand, why are they still in this relationship, why is it beneficial, why is it harmful, is that what they need, would there be something different, can they try changing that, like to me, that doesn't involve much bias helping them understand themselves. So,
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
yeah.
I want to focus also, and because I mean I, I enjoy these conversations going wherever they
Yes.
need to, but it is a
Yes.
hunting show at the end of the
It
day,
is a
right?
hunting show.
So I,
Yes.
I want to ask you kind of more specifically and maybe in a little bit more detailed sense, how how do you tie hunting in the outdoors, like you spoke about at the beginning, how do you tie that back into what you're doing in the conversations you're having with your patients?
Yeah. Can I start by like talking about my bear hunt from a couple weeks ago? Because
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because
yeah.
I have it in my notes for later. But if you're ready, man, I'm looking forward to hearing about it because you sent me that email when we were trying to schedule this podcast. You're
Yes.
like, hey, I'm going to be out of
Yes.
town next week from the bear hunt. I'm like, oh, let's do it after the bear hunt. I want to hear about the bear
For
hunt.
sure, for sure. I think this will help you kind of see into my mind, you
Yeah.
know? And so one of the things I have found most fulfilling from hunting is like I feel like to some extent, we do such a deep dive into the animals we're hunting. We know so much about their behavior, we know so much about their patterns,
Hmm.
and it takes a lot of mental work to be successful in that. So when I've gone on a couple of these guided hunts, I love learning about the animal, if that makes sense. And so my guide was really great at answering, questions about black bears and about that stuff. And we had, that time in the truck to dissect that. And it was really interesting to me that in his experience, he described how you'll have a mom or a sow with cubs, and it is fairly common for a boar to come and chase off the cubs or kill the cubs, and then hang around till the sow goes into heat pretty soon thereafter, breeds her, and then like moves on or whatever.
Hmm.
And that was such an interesting concept to me, especially because I was with my youngest brother, Bridger, and Bridger made the comment of like, "Man, I'm glad that like people don't act that way." And in my mind, I was like, "No, actually, like we see this a lot with
You'd
step
be
parents."
surprised.
Yeah, I was like, we see this a ton with step parents. Like it is kind of unnatural in a way to have a loving, protective instinct for children that are not your own, and like in my mind, people I really admire are people who are willing to go beyond human instinct and build those relationships with stepkids and stuff like that, because it is not necessarily a biological process there. And I also can understand why that's very difficult to do. So to me, like in observing animals and stuff like that, there is sometimes parallels with like the worst parts of human nature, or like the very, animal kind of side of us. And it's like, to me, I feel like I've learned lessons from observing these animals to then like, how do I live a better way? How do I um go beyond that? I think another story that like I feel like it's a very common story for elk hunters. But like I was probably like 13, 14, just like first learning with my uncles, and we were deer hunting, and we came across like a bull elk and a cow elk, and like we were in a place that like the entire time I hunted there, that's probably one of the only elk I've ever seen there. Just like in Utah, when it's still warm, they're up high, they're in the pine trees, they're close to water. This is a place that is not close to water, dry, sagebrush, lower elevation. It was just really, really weird. And it was like a young raghorn bull, so it was probably a satellite bull that chased away a cow and got lucky that just kept chasing, kind
Hmm.
of thing. But I didn't quite understand that at that time of my life. And so my uncle was like, "Hey, do you want to mess around with this elk? Like, I happen to have my bugle, do you want to see what happens?" And I was like, just ecstatic just to be out there. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do this."
Yeah.
So he bugles, and that bull, like with no response, just immediately starts chasing that cow away. And we were still probably like, about a mile away from it, just immediately started chasing her away. And like, for whatever reason, that memory just like sticks with me. And there was always something that just like felt weird about that. And, like now having done, like marriage therapies, relationship therapies, like if you are in a place of fear and insecurity, you're going to like control your spouse or your partner more. You're going to isolate them more. You're going to control them more. You're going to steer the ship because, that little raghorn bull probably had like the shit beat out of him, at some point. And like, like he had his own stuff too, but like that's totally like operating from a place of complete fear, a complete
Hmm.
lack of trust, complete control. And that's just like, not great for humans. And my guess is that it's not great for elk. Like I'm sure that she could, join back up with a herd and survive the winter. But like, I also don't know. Like she was pretty far away from where like the herd typically is.
Right.
And so like, I'd say like those are examples of how like hunting has shaped my thought processes for therapy and observations just about humans and human nature and stuff like that. And like, like you can observe elk's behavior, and some things that work for elk also work great for us, and some things that do not work for elk or work for elk like absolutely do not work for us.
Yeah.
Like that satellite bull mentality is not a great one for human beings.
Well, it is interesting. Just I mean, just I don't know. If you stop and think about it and you analyze it, kind of like you've done, it sounds like it's like at the end of the day, we are still creatures on this earth, the same as the rest
Yeah.
of them. Now, we're made in the image of a creator.
Yep.
We have a higher level of intelligence, I would say,
Yeah.
obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah, at the end of the day, we are still creatures walking the same earth that they are. So
Yep, yep. And like I am someone that believes in God and the creation process, and I take that as like, you know, like if the Bible suggests that like we are in a place to take care of these animals, I
hmm.
also think we can learn a ton from them.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I've learned a ton from hunting. I've learned a ton from raising goats and sheep and other pets and stuff like that. And I think that like there is a legit benefit there to like really understanding these animals and then like in my mind, how do you then apply that to your life?
Yeah. And man, I look at it too from just the standpoint of, I mean, not necessarily a game animal or hunting, right? But I think
Yeah.
of,
Hey, folks, if you guys are in the North Texas area like I am, then you need to go to Bear River Archery and Pro Shop in Van Alstyne, Texas. Justin and the guys up there have an incredible operation set up. They will take great care of you and all of your archery needs. They are the official bow shop in North Texas, a Fall Obsession. I love going there, and I'm picky. If you guys know me, I am very selective on who I let work on my bow. I will let Justin work on my bow. They do great stuff. Check out Bear River Archery and let them know that Fall Obsession sent you.
one comparison I have in my mind, tying it to an animal is like cattle, for example. You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
you have a bunch of cattle in a yard in a small space, right? They're
Hmm.
gonna they're gonna eat everything that's there. They're gonna trample it down. It's gonna become a muddy, sloppy mess. Eventually, everything that was there that's nutritional for them is gonna go away.
Yeah.
They are gonna start, physically and from a health standpoint, suffering and everything. And it is a gradual progression down. As soon as you turn them out into a green field, right, things start improving,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You look at that from a standpoint, and I'm not ragging on anybody that lives in a city, right?
Sure.
But you
Sure.
have city, you have congestion, you have all these people and everything, and that comes with stress, that comes with, just that yeah, that congestion and everything.
Yeah.
And once you get somebody out into the outdoors, out into nature and everything, it can really do them some good and I mean, it's very anybody that's paid attention, right? Or anybody that's hunted or truly gone on a legit hunting trip understands that, once you get out there and get away from everything, it's like, kind of that weight's lifted off of you. You have a chance to kind of refocus and everything. And I think physically that's what a lot of us feel in the outdoors
Yep.
is that kind of reconnection with God and the animals we're chasing and nature and everything like that. I think of the elk. I went on elk hunt up in Idaho last year, backcountry, 25 miles back on horseback, like the whole deal. No cell phones or cell service
Mm-hmm.
for, over a week, all that kind of stuff. And man, like that did me some good for sure
Yeah.
because and you get out there and I mean we went so far back that we're literally in country that very few humans have been in, right?
Mm-hmm.
In central Idaho, and it's like this is pretty incredible. Places like this still exist, and they're
Absolutely.
they're they're here not just for the animals, but if we get back here as we did, it does us some good as well. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I an area that has been of interest of mine recently in terms of like reading research is like research on like what does sunlight do for your body, what does being outside do for your body, and some of the stuff that like I'm starting to read about is like they've noticed that like plants and trees are releasing certain chemicals that impacts the air quality differently than like the air quality in your house and stuff like that. And they're trying to find like how does that then impact your immune system, your digestive system, because it seems like there's aspects of that there too. But like sunlight is the biggest preventative factor for things like the flu and stuff like that. Like having 15 minutes of sunlight a day is like better for you in flu prevention than even the flu vaccine and stuff like that too. Like there's nothing else that they've been able to find that correlates with flu prevention than 15 minutes of sunlight, you know? And so like on these hunting trips where you are immersed, surrounded by the pine trees, the sagebrush, the grasses, the sunlight, the temperature and stuff like that. Like I just like, yeah, I feel like there's so many benefits to that that we have no idea of in
Oh
all
yeah.
aspects of our bodies. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, long before cities and modern medicine and all this stuff, right? People were getting along just fine. And I mean,
Hmm.
and animals is too, like everything that we need for survival. And then not only that, but to strengthen ourselves physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff. It's out there. It's been out there for centuries, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like yeah, just like, and I go back to my cheesy example of the cattle in the yard, right? But the longer
Yeah.
they're in there, the more they're going to pollute it, right? The longer
Yep.
people have
Yep.
to try and tweak stuff and make stuff better
Hmm.
themselves, they might be
Yeah.
making it worse, right? I'm not trying to
For
get
sure.
into the political side of all that, but
Sure.
you
Sure.
get what I'm saying. It's just
Yep. Yep.
everything we need to live a strong and healthy life is it's out there for you, and it's
Yeah.
it's not always it's not always in a medicine or a city, I would say. So
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to know about the rest of the bear hunt. Tell me
Oh,
tell
yeah.
me
Yeah.
about we kind of got off on a rabbit trail, but tell me about
Yeah.
bear hunt.
I shared more about like my thought processes during the bear hunt than I. So I will tell this full story, and I know that if you have a chunk of avid bear hunting listeners, that they will probably make fun of me. But it is it is because of my naivety around bears that led to some of my reactions. But because I learned a lot through my experience. So um in the process of like learning about the animals, my guide was really great at helping me like try to see the difference between boars and sows and size difference. And it is way more complicated than I had anticipated, like it's pretty easy to tell, how big a deer is now, but it was surprisingly, like you see this black dot and then you like get closer and it turns out it's a cub when it like from like a mile away, it looks like a monster kind of thing. Like
Right.
it was the craziest thing for me. But so he was explaining a lot of these to us, and I feel like I kind of got a picture or I understood better around like day 2 or 3 that I could kind of judge, what I was looking at. So there was a spot that every time we went, it seemed like we were seeing like a new bear print that was like a pretty good size, or a new scat pile and stuff like that. So uh, it was a place that like we kept going back to, And one time we went back to it, still couldn't find this bear. We were driving back to another place. We came around this corner and there was just like this massive bear on the side of the road. And I was like convinced, I was like, oh yeah, that's the one. And he's like, yeah, this is the one. So it was still probably like 300-400 yards off. So we got out and I, like in Utah, I have maybe seen a total of four bears like out and about, black bears, and all been from like a tremendous distance. And then the only other times have been in like Yellowstone, or Glacier.
Yeah.
And I am in the safety of a car. I am not getting out and messing with bears at all.
Right.
And so like approaching a black bear, started to already get my nervous system, kicking in a little bit, like the adrenaline rush, um, even though logically I knew that like they don't really pose much of a danger. Um, but we're getting closer, we're downwind, and then all of a sudden he just bolts off the road into the forest, like doesn't look at us. Like probably would have been very difficult for him to smell us. So, like we're kind of like, huh, that's weird, but maybe like, someone was coming from the other direction, something like that. So my guide was like, how about you guys just like, walk to the top of the hill and wait there, and you can go look down like this next road while I go grab the truck and come back. So me and my brother go to the top of this hill, and as we are cresting the hill, I see in the ditch right next to the road the back of a black bear. And I am like, crap. And so like we're like trying to wave and get his attention. And like we must have kept missing each other because whenever he looked back, we were looking at the bear and vice versa. And so I was looking and looking, and me and my brother were both like, I'm pretty sure this is the same bear. Like, I'm pretty sure he, for whatever reason, ran in and then came back out. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is a boar. So we are at like 75 yards, and we're sneaking a little bit closer in to see him. And he's kind of waddling away from us. And then all of a sudden he just like turns around 180, starts coming towards us. And still can't smell us, still can't see us. But he's closing the gap, gets to about like 50 yards, and I'm set up on the sticks, just ready to take him out, but I don't want to shoot him in the head. Then finally he turns broadside. I drop him, and then I do not want a wounded bear to come after me or run off to the woods. So I go up for another shot, and another bear stands up behind him.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
and that bear also looked big. So then like, they told me like the two big rules are don't shoot a grizzly and then don't shoot a sow with cubs.
Uh-huh.
And so like I'm now panicking a little bit of like, did somehow I get this wrong and I just shot a cub and now here's another bear? And then it's also like this bear is like, like 60 yards away standing up. Like, is it gonna charge me? Do I shoot this bear too? Like
Right.
got me nervous. And then it kind of got a little closer, and then it dove off into the woods. And then I had no idea about like the death roar of bears. So then he starts doing his like, "Rah," and I was like, I just shot a cub, and I was like, I was like, I messed up so bad. I was like, I feel awful. I was starting to feel sick. By that time, like our guide caught back up, and he's like, "Did you get him?" And I was like, "Yeah," but I was like, "I'm worried I made a mistake because there's another bear." And he's like, "No, you guys knew what you were looking at, like I'm pretty sure." So we start approaching my bear. The other bear starts coming on the tree line closer to us, like
Oh,
15,
dang.
15, 20 yards. So I get nervous, and he's like, "Oh, that's a big bear too." And he like looks, and he's like, "You might have to shoot this one too." And I was like, okay. It like pokes its head out of the trees like 15 yards from us. And he's like, "Oh no, that's a sow. Like that's a big sow. So you must have got the boar." And I was like, "Or the cub."
Or the
And
cub.
and then he's like, "Let's go see what you've got." And I was like, and to do so, we'd have to like turn our back on the sow. And I
Yeah.
was like,
I ain't doing
and
that.
I was like, Travis, I know you're comfortable with bears. I am not comfortable with bears. And she is just like chilling there, staring us down. I'm not turning my back on this bear. He's like,
No.
okay. he's like, we'll just sit and wait for her to smell us and run off. And then she started coming out of the trees, like towards us a little bit.
And
And
she's
then
already at 15 yards?
yeah,
Oh man.
she's like, inching closer, and then she catches our smell, and then she runs off. And so then we go up, and I did get a good boar, probably, somewhere in the 6 to 6.5 feet range, like taller than me.
Wow.
But yeah, so like made me very nervous, like all the things going on, but it was really fun. It was really fun.
That's awesome, man. And this was your
Yeah.
first black bear?
Yep, first black bear. Yep.
Awesome. And you might have already mentioned it and I missed it. Where did you go for the
This
hunt?
I don't think I mentioned it. It was in Alberta.
Okay.
It was with like Udell's Guiding and Outfitting. I think that's the name of his company.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like I had a great time. It was a fun time.
That's awesome. What got you interested in going on a bear hunt like that?
My grandpa and my uncles have definitely been like world travelers in hunting, and especially like Africa, they are all deeply in love with. And so for me, I've kind of followed that same footstep that I love the adventure. I love learning new things. I love, observing these animals, and bears are ones I've always loved seeing. Like I do go to Yellowstone and Glacier, to see bears, the Tetons, to see bears. Like I love seeing them. And so it was always kind of an interest of, like learning more about them and like hunting them and stuff like that. So I'd say that was like a big motivating factor. I don't know if it's a hunt I would do again, but like I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's quickly becoming next on my list.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do something different every year, and
Uh-huh.
this year, just due to some personal stuff, I'm not doing any non-resident things outside of Texas
Yeah.
this year. But um yeah, I've gotten a pronghorn, I've gotten a mule deer, I've been elk hunting, still need to actually cross one off the list.
Off the
Haven't
list.
and
Yeah.
but bear hunting is or for black bear specifically, I have got a couple different folks that have thrown out some ideas on some hunts maybe next year going on, and
Yeah.
I'm interested. My holdup and what I get told is going to hurt me, and I know good and well it can, is I'm archery only, so
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
hunt big game with a rifle. So that I know with black bears or spring bears especially, that's challenging. So
Yeah, I think you could probably do it. It'd still be challenging, but I think you could do it.
I mean,
I
I'm up for it. Like
yeah,
I went 25, and I mean, not trying to brag, and I didn't come out with an elk myself, at least. We as a hunting
yeah,
party did, but it was not my tag on it. But yeah, I went into the mountains of central Idaho with a bow in my hand for elk, and I could have picked up a rifle and filled my tag. I did not.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't know, I'm kind of after that, I'm like, all right, I gotta I gotta I gotta hold true to this.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't falter now. So
yeah. I would think it might be a little easier for black bear than for elk with archery, but I mean, I don't do archery, so I'd have no idea. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I
that's awesome. That's a heck of a story too. That's a
yeah.
cool experience, and
Yeah. I'm sure if you have like active bear hunting listeners, I'm sure they'll be like, yeah, you had no reason to be nervous, but I was like, I am very nervous right now. Like I don't know what's going on.
no, I would probably be right there with you if I got a bear poking its head out at 15 yards away, man.
Yeah.
I ain't taking my
Yeah.
eyes off of it either. Come on.
It was making me nervous. It was making me nervous. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what kind of hunting did you grow up doing mostly, and what's like your bread and butter, you'd say?
Yeah, grew up deer and elk hunting for sure. And I would say that I love elk hunting. I love everything about it. I love like getting in the middle of an elk herd when they're just like bugling full rut, fighting, like all the noises, like you're just completely surrounded by it all. I'd say that I love that. And then uh like I grew up with like my grandpa having some private land, and then when they sold it, been trying to figure out like public land hunting. which has been okay, but very challenging. Um, but like since the hunting season on public land here in Utah does not align with the rut, I still will like love to just like go hiking in the mountains, find the elk herd, and try to get in the middle of them.
Hmm.
Even though I like am going out in without a gun and anything, and I just love being surrounded by them. Like that is absolutely my favorite thing to do. So
They're
I'd say that
incredible
for
animals.
yeah, I'd say
Incredible.
for sure elk hunting.
Hey guys, Trophy Edits is a Fall Obsession podcast partner. We all have mounts on our walls that represent a significant moment, a significant harvest in the woods for each and every one of us, and photographs can do the same. I'm sure you guys have pictures from years past, hunting with loved ones or being in the woods with family and friends that also represent those big moments. And what Trophy Edits does is they showcase those moments for you guys, just absolutely make your pictures explode and to the level that you guys can put them on the wall and also have that memory forever represented in your home, your office, your man cave, whatever it might be. Give Trophy Edits a chance to do the work for you guys. And again, they make those pictures just absolutely awesome with their professional team of editors. So go to Trophy Edits website. The link is in the podcast description. That lets them know that you guys came from us, and use the code Fall Obsession at checkout to save you guys some money.
Um, when I went to Africa for the first time, they asked like what I love about hunting or what's my favorite thing, and I described that with elk, and they said, well, the equivalent of that here is hyenas or hippos, but you, but you do that at night, and
Ooh.
I was like, that sounds fun. So my second time to Africa last year, I did hyena hunting, and that was the greatest and worst experience of my life. Like Africa during the day is kind of terrifying because anything can kill you, but like Africa at night is truly horrifying.
Man,
Like
yeah, I don't know if I'd be up for that.
it was amazing. How I had it described to me was that like also like I can't process the physics of this because like Africa's pretty flat, but when hyenas get going, it echoes. I have no idea how it echoes, but it does. And they described it to me as like when one responds to you, it's usually miles away. And then they like howl and bark and laugh and stuff like that as they're like running in towards you because you usually set up a bait and then set up a call, a hyena call. And they said that like as they get closer and closer you feel their like bark stuff in your bones, and that was the experience. Is like
Oh
when they
wow.
first started when they first started barking, I was like, that one sounds close, and he's like, that one is at least 2 miles away. And like as they just get closer and closer, like it is just the most chaotic auditory experience like I've had. It was incredible. On top of that, like when impalas are in mating season, their little like bark moan sounds like demons crawling out of hell. And
Really?
so yeah, so like they were going off at night. We heard like hippos behind us. There was a leopard that growled behind us one time, and I was just like what is this experience?
What
Like
is happening right
what is
now?
happening right now? But yeah, I would say that that was also extremely fun. I was surprised at how intense and how much fun it was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did when you went over to Africa, did what were you hunting specifically? Did you come home with anything or take
Yeah.
anything in
Yeah,
particular?
lots of things. The first trip was like zebra, impala, wildebeest, kudu,
Oh wow.
oryx. I got a giraffe my first trip
Wow.
at a Nyala. And so yeah, that was awesome. My second trip, I had so much fun hunting impala and warthog. Even though I haven't gotten a warthog yet, I've had so much fun hunting warthog, so much fun hunting impala, so much fun hunting wildebeest that my second trip was mainly kind of like the color variations of impala and wildebeest and then like hyena. Um, and like I just had so much fun with all of them.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I had a great time.
So when's the next trip? Sounds like you're gonna go back at some
Oof.
point.
I I think unfortunately for my bank account, I I am probably stuck doing an Africa trip every like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna lie, man. Like I have never been to Africa on a hunt yet.
yeah.
Our Western regional coordinator here at Fall Obsession, he also works for an African outfitter. He's like
Uh-huh.
one of their reps over here in the States and everything. And so him and I have had a lot of conversations about it, over the years and stuff. I'm well aware of the price tags, and you're
Yeah.
talking about these
Yeah.
animals, and I'm just, man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm seeing dollar signs. I'm like, oh my word, that's an expensive trip. That's awesome, but for
It
sure,
it
you pay for it. But
it helps being single. That's probably like
that does help.
number one on the list. It really helps that I'm single. It really helps that I live pretty cheaply all other aspects of my life, except for hunting. Like,
Oh
and
yeah.
then like, I mean, that it's a very expensive price tag for sure. But
Oh yeah. It's an expensive hobby or mental
yeah,
health therapy, however you want to
yeah,
look at it, comes at
both.
a price.
It is my therapy.
Yeah.
It is absolutely my therapy
Absolutely.
for sure.
So I have a couple other hunting related questions
Yeah.
to ask you. I am going to wait until here in just a second, at the very end of the episode, because
Okay.
I want to before we get there, I want to dive back in real quick, just with your book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Mainly, I know you've kind of touched on the purpose of the book and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, but I want to dive in a little bit more detailed on your journey writing that, because
Yeah.
so for example, like I am a guy who has all of these ideas floating around his head, whether
Yeah.
it's in the hunting world or the fire department world,
Yeah.
and I have thought about putting together a book before. I have yet to
Yeah.
put a single word on a piece of paper, because as you know, that is a commitment that takes time and a lot of
Yes.
effort.
Yes.
So talk to me about that journey, going from just that thought on, oh man, I could put something together on this, to actually making it happen.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, it was years of collecting and writing down thoughts, experiences, and stuff like that. And then feeling like, man, I've got a lot of stuff here. And I also see that it resonates a lot with people, you know? So it kind of came with that little bit of like confidence, you know, of like I feel like I've got some great stuff that relates to people here. So that was the case. But then what really inspired it is my dad sold his business and was interested in writing a book too. And hearing him get into that process really also kind of ignited that fire of like, oh, I've seen he can do it, so I can do it. But full disclosure, I do not have the time and I do not have the writing abilities or the grammar abilities to like fully do it. So I did hire a ghostwriter and loved that I could just be like, hey, here is like 10 stories in this category. Here are my thoughts in this category. You put it together, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I found that she was masterful in that middle process. And then she would give me the rough drafts. And I feel like for me, I was really good at like reading through it and being like, okay, that doesn't sound like me. That's not quite what I believe. That's not quite how the story went. And then I would suggest edits and tweaks. And then she would like update that and send that to me. So I feel like I was really good on the bookends, but that middle section, I did not have the time and I did not have the skill to do that. So that made it tremendously easy. However, that is also costly. So
Hmm.
I don't know how much I'll ever like recover, the money I've put into the book. But, like that wasn't entirely the process behind it because you make such minimal margins off of books anyways. So like my thought process was, like if this can, reach a group of people, if this can help out to some extent, that's worth it for me, even if it's not going to lead a path to, like a financial income per se. But
Hmm.
just because like I have 11 therapists that work for me. I still see clients and like that's enough to sustain my life. So this was kind of like a side project that I also feel important about to, get that out there. But that's kind of the process of it. It was about like a 10-month process where um to do that. And then like I think that because I love reading, I've been an avid reader my whole life. And I think like being on this side of it, like it is shocking how much research, work, effort goes into the writing, into the publishing, into the picking the cover of the book, into like because I did self-publishing, so like the only place you can really get it is Amazon, or if you happen to
Hmm.
find me at a hunting convention, then you can buy it off of me. But I think now I'm also on like Barnes and Noble and maybe some other stuff, but um it's just crazy to me how much details go into this. And then like apart from the audiobook was its own animal. So I feel like like these authors that are cranking out books have to have like 30 people working on this because it's like insane, doing it kind of like by yourself or with some help. But it's been really cool because I love learning the behind the scenes stuff. So that's been really insightful. I've learned a ton. It's been quite the process. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
So you just mentioned like trade shows and stuff. I
Yeah.
guess are you just attending trade shows, or are you getting like a booth and stuff at different, outdoor expos and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so since I published it in October of last year, I thought that the best way to reach my audience was at like hunting conventions. So I did one in Reno and I did one in Portland, well, close to Portland is technically Vancouver, Washington.
Hmm.
In March, I did both of those. Um, because of weather and other factors. I mean, if you want to go down the gossip train, it's the show in Vancouver was quite the experience, but um they weren't necessarily highly attended, but I was really able to network with other vendors
Hmm.
and that was very beneficial to me to like learn about like the bigger shows and some of the bigger shows I had tried to get into uh didn't allow me. So like the one here in Salt Lake, the Western Hunting Expo was one that like since it's like hometown, I've gone to that one for so many years. Tried to, but like they kind of wanted you to have other experience. They didn't want to like test out a new vendor, and then also they have a massive waiting list. And so that was also the case for Cowboy Christmas in Vegas. And because like some people at these shows were at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and one guy like was really excited about my book because like his fiance, at least at the time, his fiance was a social worker and he was, working for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And so they got me into Cowboy Christmas. So I don't know if I can hang in Vegas for 10 days, but we're gonna but we are going to try.
There you
And
go.
you might find me in an inpatient institution after that, but yes, I'm excited to try that. I'm gonna try to get into the SCI show and the Salt Lake show, and give this a good go, a good effort to see if it catches on, if it reaches people, and see where that goes. I think that if I had all the money and could pick exactly how my career manifests, there's a lot of charities that are starting to like take veterans out hunting and fishing and stuff like that, and to build community to help them process stuff like that. And that type of stuff is so cool to me too. And so, if this ends up being some type of way to like produce, mental health retreats for guys, for women, um, for veterans, to like go hunting, go fishing, go to a cabin, and try to like help folks in that type of way. Like I'd be really excited if I could get to that point,
Yeah.
where that goes. So
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
yeah,
we have even tried to we've done it 3 times so far where we've actually been able to do like a veteran hunt down
yeah,
here. Have a local guy on our team that, has from time to time donated that hunt basically on his hunting ground and everything, and yeah, select a veteran and taking him out there. We've had a couple of folks were local from down here. Another guy was from California that came down to hunt. Never he was a hunter, but he'd never hunted white-tailed deer before. So
uh-huh,
it's a pretty cool experience for him and everything. But yeah, there's
yeah,
there's there's a ton of value in that, and I think like Waylon, that gentleman, he's the hunt host in that sense, right? But I've gotten to tag along just as kind of the fall obsession representative, and then I've gotten to, film and create content and do a little production with
Yeah.
them. And yeah, that's just been that's been pretty awesome to just get to witness everything and just watch them kind of decompress and everything over the course of a weekend and stuff. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, like I look at some of my relationships. So my dad would come hunting with us, but my dad's not a hunter. And so it's my mom's family that's kind of like, brought me in the way. And I look at like the connection I feel to my uncles, and like my cousin is my best friend, and my brothers, because I've kind of drug my brothers into it a little bit. And I do think that like that depth of that relationship comes from those types of experiences. And I think that when you're in the military, you have that with, your squad, and then
mhm.
you come back and like people just can't relate to you in the same way. But
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. Hope you guys are enjoying it. There's so many different places that you guys can tune in to Fall Obsession Podcast, and one of them is the Outdoor Call radio app. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he created an app that you can download on any device where you can stream hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day. Our show, Fall Obsession Podcast, plays on that loop on Mondays. That's the same day as our new publications on the other apps. And there's also tons of other hunting shows and podcasts on there that you guys can listen to. Go download the Outdoor Call Radio app today. It is free. You can start streaming immediately. And be sure that you follow their Facebook page, because Outdoors Dan does some live radio shows throughout the week. And even if you are not local to those radio stations, his broadcasts are shared on his Facebook Live. It's Outdoors Dan and the Outdoor Call Radio app. Go download it today.
I do think that what I've observed from a distance of some of these charities is some really great work that you're rebuilding that through hunting camps. You're rebuilding that support system, and so I think that that's really awesome, because that can help them then feel more at peace and comfortable, and then their body can relax from the war.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
100%. I couldn't agree more with you, man. That's
yeah,
spot on.
yeah,
Well, I know for the time we have for the episode, I know we're getting close. I wanted to ask you a
yeah,
couple of questions I ask every first time hunting guest on our
yeah.
show. The first one is, tell us a little bit about one of your favorite hunting memories in your life.
I'd say the hyena one is
Yeah.
probably it. So I already talked about that one. So, I'd say that, I got a pretty decent elk, and that was probably like my best day of elk hunting, where saw, over 300 elk, got in the midst of, several groups, saw like some really interesting looking elk. There was one elk we saw that was as black as a moose. At first I thought it was a moose, and then I thought it was a moose with elk antlers, and then realized it was like just like a really, really black elk. But probably would have taken a shot at him if he wasn't kind of like a raghorn. So, like really cool to see, like have an elk charge into like 10, 15 yards, like ready to fight, and then they smell you, and then they're confused to what you are, and then they run away. And the bull I got was fighting with another bull with a large group of cows, and then the cows started paying attention to us, so they started running, but the bulls were too distracted, too caught up in fighting each other and chasing each other. So we just kind of like paralleled them through the trees as like this whole herd is moving in chaos. And then we get to this open area, and the elk kind of go up into this open area, and the bulls split apart. And my uncle was like, the one on the left is, thicker. The one on the right's got a better 6 point. He's like, which one do you want? And I was like, the thicker one. And just like, popped shot, dropped it. And then just, yeah, just so excited. And, I talk about this, a part of this story of my book is like, uh, gun safety, I'd say for the large majority of us is like very strict, like very strict rules around, gun safety. And so like it was drilled into my head, like you empty, you empty the case, and make sure it's empty, and then you take like the safe shot before you put your gun down. So we got up to my bull. Um, I had thought that I had emptied out my chamber, but in all the excitement, I must not have, because I pointed my gun in a safe direction, pulled the trigger, and it shot off another shot.
Oh,
And scared all of us. And I got a lecture for it, and I was like, I deservedly
yeah.
so got a lecture from it. But yeah, I was, like, because those rules were so ingrained in my head of, like, thankfully I was like pointing in a safe direction, and
Hmm.
so yeah, all of that was fine. So
Awesome.
yeah, so yeah,
I'm glad. Well, the elk stories, those are always awesome. I'm glad you mentioned the hyena when I asked this question. I'm always interested on what people's favorite hunting memories are. I think you're the first guy I've had on the show that their favorite memory involves a hyena. So
yeah,
that's a first. I
yeah.
like that.
It
But
was I was told I was extremely lucky. I was told I had pretty easy and unique hyena hunting experiences, but uh man, it was intense. Like, it was so intense. It was so great. I loved
that's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, next question I got for you
Yeah.
is what is on the bucket list? What are those hunts that you want to go on that you would consider once in a lifetime?
Yeah, can we have like an edited version of this show so my mom doesn't hear this part? Because she was like pretty aggressive on the black bear hunt. I was like I will be in no danger, and turns out I was maybe in a little bit of danger. But
Earplugs, mom.
yeah, earplugs, mom. Yeah, don't listen to this part, mom. I would say that the Cape Buffalo
Mm,
is high on the list. I say there's the list of like I don't have the finances for, and then there's the list of like, like probably within range. The one that's
yeah.
within range is definitely the Cape Buffalo. Um, I've got 3 out of the 4 of the color variations of Impala. So I'd say like getting the white flanked Impala is on my list. And the warthogs have kept escaping me. So warthog is on my list. As weird as that sounds, it was so much fun. Um, if I'd say moose is on my list, grizzly bear is on my list. Um, if and then outside of my current financial range, I'd say like the Dall sheep, the Marco Polo sheep, um, the tar, I think the red stag is maybe within my range, but I'd love to go to like Argentina or New Zealand for that.
Yeah.
So my list is unfortunately very long.
I don't know anybody who doesn't have a long list. So
Yes, yes. So we'll see what I can make work for sure.
that's awesome. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
Good experiences for sure. Well, man, in closing, just for our listeners, tell them where they can find you, where they can get the book, where they
yeah,
can follow along if that's an option, or even if somebody's out there that's been listening to this podcast and they're like, man, I might want to talk to this guy. Then
yeah.
how does that happen?
So the book, easiest place is Amazon. I think it's on Barnes and Noble now. So far the audiobook is only on Audible. Um, I would say social medias, there's a Facebook page and an Instagram page, Hunting for Happiness, that you should be able to find. I am not good in the social media area. So my clinical director's wife is, and so she kind of manages those things for me. And she does a great job. She takes clips from the book and other stuff like that. Um, I would say that to pursue me for therapy is a little bit complicated because it does kind of depend on what state you are in terms of being allowed to practice outside of your state.
Hmm.
There's a really cool law that has started to be put into place by, I think, over 25 of the states where if you have a license in that state, you can perform therapy in any of the other states. Um, I do think Texas is a part of that. The law is the counseling compact, so you can look that up. Utah is in that, but I don't think it goes into effect for another year or two. So then it just depends on what laws does your state currently have. The second problem is I do not really have space for new clients.
Okay. I probably should have asked that before I threw it out there, but yeah.
No. So I do not have space. But I have lucked out to have some really talented therapists working for me, like extremely talented therapists. And although not all of them are hunters, I'd say actually probably none of them are hunters. They've read my book, they interact with me, they know my thought process, and a lot of them have very similar therapy styles to me and have been, like drawn to me for that. And so, any of my employees are so talented, and um, I do on occasion can help people try to find a therapist. Um, but I'd say like the other thing too is like you don't know till you try it. Like give it 2 or 3 times. If it's not for you, try somebody else,
Yeah.
like that's kind of my thought process with that.
Gotcha.
But
Well, appreciate the insight. I encourage our listeners to pick up the book if they haven't already and check that out. And man, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you got or anything else you want to add or hit on before we shut it down?
uh nothing other than like, like I think something I say in the book is like the best way to cowboy up, is like deal with your issues, make better relationships, communicate better, just like don't avoid, don't delay, just like it's so worth it, like living a better life, having better relationships is worth kind of the awkward, painful, clunky process it is. And so just go for it.
Absolutely. Well, Zach, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for coming on our show to share some of your insight and yeah, kind of your unique journey and this niche that you have going on and everything. I think it's pretty cool and well served for sure. So
Yeah,
appreciate your time and thanks for coming on the show.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. Guys, thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I am back with y'all again next week for another podcast. I'll catch you then.